He's always got something interesting on his mind. He's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Our buddy Mark Schlereth is here. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We would be doing better if the Seahawks could have pulled out a win. They have now lost 5 of 6. And I thought our producer, Mike Lefko, asked a very good question. And I want to see what your answer is to this. Is this Seahawks team, Mark, closer to being a good team or a bad team right now?
Well, right now, a bad team. I mean, obviously you can't be at home and give up 7 sacks. And give up ultimately give up a ton of pressures, turn the ball over. Those are all things that bad teams do. I mean, and you know what's crazy? Like, what's crazy about it? And I said this a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, a couple of years ago, to the Arizona Cardinals GM. And I said, you guys are so talented that you continue to fool yourself into believing you're a good football team. And you know what? You'll score touchdowns at the end of a half, at the end of a game, to make it a one-score game, and everybody will say, wow, they're so close. And the truth of the matter is you're not close because you don't dominate the line of scrimmage. And I don't care, we get so enamored and we're so into wide receivers and speed. And we track everybody's, this guy ran 20 miles an hour, 21 miles an hour, and, we got to have 3 wides, and we're going to spread everybody out, and we're going to do – and it's such a bunch of garbage. But you know what? It's exciting, right? And like I always say, throwing the football and creating big-time plays in the passing game and being in shotgun is like Viagra to 80-year-old owners. They can't get enough of that stuff. But the bottom line is it makes you play close, and it makes you play one-score games, but it doesn't make you a good football team. And so I would say that they're closer to a bad football team than they are, whatever the question was. I wasn't really listening. I just got on
Are they closer?
I just got on this diatribe.
Closer to a good team or a bad team right now was the question.
Yeah, bad team. They're closer to a bad team.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, I'm looking at, and I don't know, this might be too specific to ask about Michael Jarrell, but, their right tackle, excuse me, and one of the things that happens when you get, penalties, that's one thing. And I'm counting, I think he had 25 yards as far as penalties go, but he also had like two long plays that were called back, and the total was, and he gave up a 14-yard sack. And so now it's like at like 117 yards is the opportunity cost there. And, it's, I don't know, I just, how bad is this offensive line, do you think, compared to what you're seeing everywhere else in the NFL?
Well, there's a lot of bad offensive line play, but that play that play last week was really bad. And back and I ended up watching the whole game this afternoon because, I live in New York by myself and I walk around the streets like a homeless guy most of the time. So I don't have a whole lot to do. And so I just come
you
back.
Must be really bored.
Yeah, I was like, what am I going to do? Let me watch Seattle films since I've gone on with you guys. So that's what I did. But, yeah, it's bad. And let me just tell you that, there's a lot of things, a lot of nuance to playing offensive line, right? To be really good at playing offensive line, it's so much more above the neck than I think people really understand. And obviously you got to have good feet and good hands. And that gets you, but that's endemic of any position in the National Football League. If you don't have great feet and great hands, you can't play. I don't care what the position is. You just can't. And that's where the game is played, your feet and your hands. And so what ends up happening when you walk up the line of scrimmage, you have to be asking yourself certain questions like, where's my help? How can I funnel a guy and make him go where I want him to go? What kind of set do I take to make him and invite him to go somewhere? Because if I do that, he's going to go there, and I've already won the battle. Where is my help coming from? Where can I not get beat? When I walk on the line of scrimmage, one of my first thoughts as an offensive lineman is, where can I not get beat? Because I'm going to take that away. And then ultimately, what's your best move in a critical situation? What's your go-to pass rush move? What have you gotten the most sacks on? Because 9 times out of 10, that's the move you're going to throw. So let me set to take that move away, and therefore I'll react on everything else. When you get a lot of penalties as an offensive line, What it tells me is you're out of position. You're either out of position because you don't have good feet in your and hands, or you're out of position because you're dumb and you don't understand. You don't understand where your help is. You don't understand how to use people's body presence. You don't understand how to funnel people where you want them to go, how you invite people. And so there's so much more nuance to it, and there's so much more of an education. Hey, I'll tell you this. When I played in Denver, I knew every drop of the quarterback and every timing of each route based upon the route combination that was called. So I knew when I could be aggressive and run block a 5-step drop. I knew when I had to play a 5-step drop like it was a 7-step drop because it always came with a couple of hitches. I knew when I could attack things. I knew when I couldn't attack things based upon the routes and route combinations. So it's so much more intricate than anybody thinks or anybody really knows. And the communication is so important. Having continuity is so important. But really understanding the game is incredibly important. And that's why good offensive lines play the game from the neck up more than anything else. They really are connected that way. And they really understand, where the problems are and how to avoid those problems and how to be, a team that basically eliminates as many one-on-ones as possible through playing together and using your help accordingly.
So in keeping all of that in mind, Mark, are the issues with the Seahawks then coaching? Is it football? I'm talking about the O-line coach specifically, like getting that, ingrained in these guys. Is it, I don't know, football IQ? I mean, these guys are obviously good enough physically, talented-wise, to get to the NFL level, but to get to that area that you're talking about, what's preventing that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, continuity. Do you have, have you had a lot of injuries? Have you had a lot of guys shuffling through different positions? And then ultimately having an offensive coordinator that understands what your issues are up front. And I say this all the time, and I don't know your guys' coordinator. I know he came from the college game, but you show me a team that gives up 7 sacks, I'll show you a team that has a coordinator that doesn't understand what the problems are up front. Because you have to, and I've probably told you guys this before, but I repeat myself all the time. Probably because I talk to too many people and constantly doing radio shows and stuff. But
so popular,
and also talking to yourself, wandering the streets of New York.
Very, very. And I talk to myself while I'm walking down the streets, and they're like, "Stay away from the homeless guy, honey." So that happens to me on occasion. But again, you got to give me the tools to have success. If you just ask me to drop back, and we're going to throw a drop back game, or we're going to be in shotgun, and the majority of the time, I mean, Seattle is one of the heaviest shotgun teams in the league. Like, if you're just going to do that, you're taking a tool away from me. And those things to me matter. Like, why does being under center matter? Well, being under center matters because when I'm under center and we run a play-action play, you know what linebackers have to do? They have to step up. Linebackers in shotgun, one, they can see the backfield much cleaner than you can when you're under center. When you're under center, you turn your back to the defense when you're running a play action. Shotgun, you don't. So the ball never truly gets hidden. And then in shotgun, defenses tend to play high to low, meaning they get deeper drops and take away intermediate routes. When you're playing under center, linebackers tend to play about a yard closer to the ball, and then when you flag that ball and you turn your back to the defense, they can't help but step up. Same with safeties. And so you create a bigger space between the linebackers, the second, the underneath coverage and the deep coverage. And so it creates easier throwing windows and quicker throws, which in turn, the complementary nature of football, in turn helps us up front. And so all that stuff, to me would help you be a better group up front. But again, when you're playing shotgun 80% of the time, to me that just doesn't help us. And so some of that is play calling, some of that is philosophical approach to football. That I'm a big believer in. That a lot of offenses in today's game just don't operate that way.
Totally agree with you on the under center thing. And just from a linebacker's perspective, I mean, doesn't give you near as much time to react. But since I wouldn't ask this question if you hadn't just said, you watched the game, what do you think's going on with Laken Tomlinson? And did you think he was a good player before? Because, he's struggling. And, I thought that, the left side of the offensive line was going to be just phenomenal because he's had such a great pro career. But what do you think's going on with him? Is it what you're talking about, that just, the offense that we're running that doesn't click with him?
Yeah, I think that's probably part of it, is just understanding the offense in general and having a great feel for it. And, I thought he was really good. I thought he was a good player when I think he left Detroit, went to San Francisco, and I don't know how long he's been in the league now. I'm sure he's getting a little bit older, but the thing about continuity up front, just for offensive lines in general, is that, like, I always said this about playing offensive line. Like, one, we're like this. There's a certain weirdness to that group, as you know, Dave. And it is this secret mushroom society that we are the only ones that really know what we're doing. And I always said, if you get five guys doing the wrong thing, as long as all five are doing the wrong thing together,
right,
it's going to be a successful play. But what ends up happening when you have lack of continuity, and not only with those five guys, but in the way you call an offense. So if I'm getting coached one thing, but you're calling it, and and the offensive coordinator wants you to do another thing, or the head coach wants you to do something else, and you're calling things differently, it just muddies the water. And it's just a hard thing to explain, but it's a really hard way to play. And so, I had these great offensive line coaches and these great schemes and systems that, we just ran the same stuff all the time. We just window dressed it. And, it's like that 10,000 hour rule, I've run this play 10,000 times. You've defended it 100 times. I'm better than you. And I'm going to whip your ass. And that was kind of the philosophy that we always had. But I will tell you, man, I have been in many meetings where my offensive line coach, Alex Gibbs, would walk out of our meeting room into the hallway, call Mike Shanahan out of the team meeting room, and they would get into a shouting match, a screaming match over what Mike wanted us to do. And it would be like, you mother blanking, and I'm not doing it, and I won't ask my guys to do it. You can kiss. I mean, it would be like, oh my gosh, Mike, like, Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Shh, close the door. Listen, we're like, it was unbelievable what would go down. But Alex won those fights. Alex Gibbs, my old line coach, won those fights because we were that good. And he's like, I will not ask my guys to do something that I think is stupid. And and I had this rapport with Alex where we had this for years, for 6 years, this unscheduled 5:15 a.m. meeting every day where he'd come down into the training room, because I was always doing a couple hours of rehab before I'd go in to watch film and before the meeting started. And we would go over like the footwork we wanted on each blocking assignment, from tackle to tackle, even the tight ends. Like, we just go through the game plan, and we'd be like, hey, Mike wants to put this play in. We took it from somebody. How would you block this? What are the pitfalls? Like, we would discuss all those things. And then, he'd be like, okay, good, I'm going to put it in that way. And then that's how we would present it to the team. But we were connected that way. And then I was connected with all the guys that I played with that way. And so we had freedom to say, I don't like that. That doesn't work. I don't like the way you call it. I don't like the way you play it, or I hate that play. Let's get out of the game plan. And to the point where he asked me on a couple of different times during the course of a week of practice that play that he hated and he didn't like it the way it fit, say, hey, screw this up for me in practice. Like, don't block this correctly so we can get it thrown out. And, it would be like, don't play. Hey, you're pulling on counter and we're doing this. I hate this play. run by the defensive end and miss him or whatever. And I'd do it, and Shanahan would be dog cussing me. But we'd do it 3 times. We'd screw it up 3 different ways, and then he canned the play before we put it in on Sunday.
I love it.
Yeah, so we had there's a lot of crazy stuff that went on, but it was about it was about our team, but it was about us playing really well. So the rest of those guys, so Terrell Davis could rush for 1,700 or 2,000 yards. Like, it was what we did well, and we really adhered to the things that we could do. And sometimes when I'm talking to teams or consulting for teams, they're really struggling. I always say this. I say it's almost like, you remember Curly from City Slickers? The cowboy.
Yeah, Jack Palance
said to them, "Hey." Yeah, Jack Palance said, "Hey, let me give you the key to life. It's one thing," and then he kills over and he's dead, and they never got the one thing.
Yeah.
Like, what I tell teams all the time is one thing. Find one thing that you can do well, and do that. And then after you start developing and being really good, regardless of what defense they get us, like, you have one thing that we're going to do, and we're going to window dress it. We're going to do it out of different personnel groupings or different formations, but find one thing that you do well and run the snot out of that. And then build adjunct plays off of that look identical, that teams have to play that scheme, and then you have a counter to that. So, like, one thing I would tell you, like, on the backside of tight zone, in the backside of tight zone, I want my footwork to be identical. I want my hat placement, my hands. I want everything to look identical every time I run it. And then I want to use the exact same footwork, hand placement, hat placement. I want it to look identical. And all of a sudden I want to run power. And as you're trying to cross my face, as you're trying to squeeze me down in the A-gap, I whip around and wheel on you. And we take you 3 gaps beyond where you're supposed to be. And now when we run power coming back the other way, there is a gaping chasm, because you've had to play the backside of tight zone. And I made my double team block look identical to my block on the backside of zone. And when you start getting to that kind of level of coaching, that level of understanding, and that level of actually blocking things, guess what happens? Now I've got the defense on skates, and everything looks identical to them. It's really hard to play an individual block because you start playing the scheme. And when I show you the scheme and then wheel on you and do something completely different, like, you're going to be out of position, and we're going to get big-time yardage.
Hey, Mark, I didn't catch all that. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm joking.
I know. Normally we don't get this in depth, right? Normally I just get in here and I doink around for a while, and I walk away, and you guys go, "That dude's an idiot." You know? So,
we love it. We love
it.
it. That was great. Hey, I do want to ask you, though, quickly about Geno, and this is obviously connected to some of the struggles of the O-line protecting him, but the last 2 games he's thrown 4 picks. He threw 3 in this game, and Dave and I were talking about this just looking at it. It could be 7 picks in these 2 games, because there's been 3 where he's hit defenders in the hands, and they just didn't come up with the ball. So are you on the season, 11 touchdowns, 10 picks? We can go through and explain away a bunch of them, but they are what they are. So when you see him, is this a guy who's forcing it, that he's seeing the limitations of his line and he's trying to do extra, he's trying to do more than he should? Or what are you seeing out of Geno in the way of his turning the ball over?
Yeah, well, you can always make an excuse like, "Hey, man, the one pick, one pick off the play action where the defensive end grabs the tight end, and you think your tight end is going to be there, and maybe he can't get off that grab, and then the little DB grabs it down there by the goal line." I mean, 2 of those picks, one was in the end zone that went back 103 yards the other way, and the other one, same rookie kid is the one I'm talking about, where the defensive end grabbed the tight end that you thought was going to be in the flat. But one, you got to be judicious with the football. You got to understand that. And 2, I just think because you felt so much pressure, because you've had those issues, it speeds you up. As a quarterback, it speeds you up. And when you're sped up, and I've had this conversation with a lot of different coaches here recently with young quarterbacks and how their mechanics get sped up. Like, young quarterbacks get sped up mechanically because the first read isn't open, and they're so athletic and they're so eager that they instead of just gliding up in the pocket with your hitch, they sprint to the hitch. And now they're ahead of the route that's supposed to come open. So then it's not open, and then you go to the next one. Well, guess what? That one's not open either because you're way ahead of the timing of the route combination. And so you're ahead of the progression. The other way you get sped up is when you get hit a lot. Right now you're going, I got to go. Your clock speeds up. But when your clock speeds up, your feet speed up. And, the timing of the offense is kept at the quarterback's feet. And when the quarterback's feet speed up, guess what? He's off. You're not going to be on time with the football. You're going to be ahead. And so then you get to the point where you're forcing things because things aren't coming open on time. And so I think the pressure has created this sense of Geno, because Geno's a very accurate, big-time arm talent, very accurate guy. I just think he's so sped up that he is forcing the ball. He's early where the receivers aren't open yet, and so then he's just making some bad decisions, throwing it into team meetings and such. So I think that's kind of what's going on with Geno because of the lack of continuity up front and the lack of protection that they're giving him.
Great stuff as always, Mark. We always appreciate your time and your in-depth analysis was spot on today. We appreciate it.
Well,
careful.
I will. I appreciate that. Don't expect that very often because I had time on my hands today, so I looked at your guys' film. Like that was. I'm usually not that diligent or that hard of a worker. So I just want you to know. Normally, I just skate through it.
Just know that we took note of the effort, and it's appreciated. Now we can get back to the comedy.
All right, great. Appreciate you guys. Later.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.